Gemara. Today's daf is daf Hey Amud Aleph, and we are going through the Mishnah. We finished the subject of Tumah, and we concluded that when we say that you had to have a yedi in the beginning, you had to know that you were tamei, and then you forgot, and then you knew. That is when it warrants a bracha. So we Gemara concluded that when we say you knew in the beginning, it didn't mean mamish you knew that you were tummy and everything else you forgot. Because then we had an issue with Saita, we had an issue with the knowledge of the Torah. But we're saying Yedi means Yedi is Beis Harav. You learned in school all about the laws of Tumah. And if you would have just thought about it for 1 second, you rather realize you're Tameh. You touched something Tameh. You knew the laws, but you just didn't apply to it. You applied it. You didn't sort of, make it real. When you learned it, you thought of like theory. You didn't sort of apply to it. And therefore, that's called Yediyah. That is enough Yediyah to say it warrants a carbon. When is it a situation where you have no Yediyah then? A person who was never raised with a Jewish education, a Tinuk Shenishba, they have no Yediyah whatsoever. And that's when we say that you don't, bring a carbon. You bring the karbanos of Yom Kippur, and otherwise will work. So now we are up to the next case in Mishnah, which was, we're looking for examples of two which branch out to four. So we say Yitzias HaShabbos Shtayim Shein Arba. That Yitzias HaShabbos is two, which becomes four. Says and we said, what do you mean two that becomes four? So we said that there were two. There was Haitzah and there's Achnasa. Haitzah means taking it out of your house. There's the rich person standing in the house taking an object out, or the poor person standing outside putting his hand in and taking something out. That's the two of Haitzah. Two of Achnasa is exactly the opposite. The poor person outside walks in with something, or just puts something down from outside and puts it on the table inside. Says the Gemara, we're up to now in the wide lines. That Hey Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Yitzias Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba. Tran Has been looking at the first Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. Yitzias Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba b'fnim u'Shtayim Shein Arba b'chutz. There it says there's two malachas, principal malachas, which extend to four. B'fnim, the way Rashi learns over here, is to bring, b'fnim means hachnasa, bringing inside, and l'chutz means taking it outside. Two equals four, 2 to 4. In other words, it's like 8 in total. Rashi in Shabbos learned b'fnim means for the person standing inside, and l'chutz means for the person standing outside. Anyway, he says the Gemara, so over there it's much more exhaustive. Here it says that there's two that it branches out to four. There it says it breaks it down further. There's two that branches out to four for inside. There's two that branches out to four for the outside. Right? It's two for Hachnasa, which branches out to four. There's two for Yitzhak, that branches out to four. Over there, actually, how do you branch out from 2 to 4? From the 2 we made it to 4, we're talking about there's also 2 more derabbanans. In order to carry on Shabbos, you have to lift it, take it outside, and then put it down, for example. There's 3 components. There's the akira, lifting it, the moving it, transporting it, and then placing it down on the ground, which is the hanocha. If you did only half of that, part of that, let's say you did the akira without the hanocha, it's also exactly about Torah, but Rabbanan is also. Rabbanan is also. So over there, the Mishnah includes these isurin de Rabbanan. Even though the Gemara there questions, you could have had more examples, but that's the Gemara there. Bottom line is that how come over there you have more than that? So that's very simply. There it's the main Shabbos. There the main laws of Shabbos. So it says the Avos and it says the Tulas. Here it's not the Ika Shabbos. We only learn the Avos and we don't learn the Tulas. The Avos is Yitzias. Remember, there's the Haitzah on Shabbos and there's Hachnasa. Haitzah we learn from a pasuk, either I'll take Yetzis Rekoimah for Yichali Amahavi, or from both. And Hachnasa we said Mali Yuli, Mali Afuki. Hachnasa is a svara. What's the difference? Which way you're going in? You're going in, you're going out. Hachnasa is the same. So the Gemara here learns, we also had the Tzadik Vav and Beis and the Beis and Shabbos as well, is that in Shabbos that Hachnos is a tool because not before in the pasuk. We saw as the Av. So over there we learn the Avos and the Tulas. That's why we have so many more details. So about carrying on Shabbos, why over here we only have Shtayim Shein Arba, and in Gemara Shabbos we have Shtayim Shein Arba Frim, Shtayim Shein Arba Chutz. B'fnim b'chutz can mean either the poor person is the chutz and the rich person is in b'fnim, and we're so many different ways of carrying. Or b'fnim means bringing inside hachnasa, and b'chutz means taking outside, which let's say. But either way, over there it's because of Masechta Shabbos, it goes into more specifics. It goes into tuldas. Here we don't go to tuldas. And the most obvious question is the tulda is achnasa. So how do you get Shtayim Shen Arba? What was it Shtayim Shen Arba in our Gemara in our Mishnah right here? Shtayim is a poor man and a rich man. The poor man is doing either Hachnasa or Eitzah, and the rich man is doing either Hachnasa or Eitzah. In other words, the rich man's inside takes the object out. That's Eitzah of a rich man. The poor person puts his hand inside, lifts something from the table, takes it out. That's Eitzah of the poor man. And then that's only two. How do you get the other two? The other two is Hachnasa. The poor person walks in with the object, or the poor person, let's say, puts his hand in and brings an object in. But bottom line is, or the rich person doesn't make a difference. So bottom line is that the only way you can get 4 years also through Hachnasa. So why tell me Maisa, but they will learn Avos and Tuldas, here learn Avos. The Tuldas is Hachnasa. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. So how something was like this? Why over here it says Stein Shen Arba, and over there it says Stein Shen Arba Chutz? Also, the Geshavas on Arba Tuldas. Geshavas over Tuldas. Here we don't mention Tuldas. Oh, for the Gemara, 1 second. Avos my new. So what are the Avos? Only Yitzias. No, Yitzias Tatahavan. How many kinds of Yitzias? There's only two. What are the two? Either you're walking out with the object, or you're taking the object out and you're standing in one place. No. So how do you get forward? The only way you can get forward is by including hachnasas. So it goes back to the question: why in Masechta Shabbos you have Shtayim Shem Arba Pnim, Shtayim Shem Arba Chutz, and here you only have Shtayim Shem Arba? The Chitema Mehen Lechiv Mehen Leptur, that the Gemara in Shabbos over there is including items which are sorry, over here we're talking about only the Avos. So how do you get Shtayim Shem Arba? Because there's two that you're Chayiv Ma'atoid and two that you're Potter. For example, if you only did the Akira and the other guy took it from you, so he did Hanocha. Or you took it outside and then he took it from your hand. In either case, so you have two cases the Rabbanon. That's what Mishnah Shem Arba. We're only talking about Avos, Hitzos. But Shtayim, that two which Mahatoyre, Shem Arba, that two which are Midrabbanon. So what are we talking about? But Dumya the Maris Negoim Tani, like in the Mishnah, for example, the next case is Maris Negoim. Maras Negoim are two shades which are the principal ones, and then two secondary shades. But all four of them are Asam HaTorah. So when you say Shtayim Shen Arba and Shabbos, obviously all four of them are Asam HaTorah, but two are more explicit and two are more implicit. So so it goes back to the question: if Avos is the only thing we learn over here, not Tuldas, where do you get Arba? Says the Gemara. But do not going to the Mahas and Kulachiyuv, Kulachiyuv, they're all Chayiv, Elamara Proper, Hosam, the Ika Shabbos. Tani Chiyuv Tudo. No, we learn inside Hachnas and Sayetza. Over there is the main rules of Shabbos. So therefore, we're not only learning the Yisur Deraisa, we're also learning the Yisur Rabban. And then the Gemara wants to know why, if that's the case, there are more scenarios, more Rabbanos. You should have a lot more than Stein Shen Arba. And we're going to deal with that there. We learn Avos and we learn Tuldas. But over here, we're only learning those which are Chayiv Mahatayr, Hoitzah and Achnasa. And the Yisur Rabbanon we don't include. Tani Chiyuva. Pedi Gemara. It's a light Tani learn. Gemara Chiyuva. Ma'ininu. So what are the Chiyuvim? It says Yitzias. It says even Fedish Yitzias Shabbos. Yitzi means Hoitzah. So how do you get to 4? Forget the Gemara in Shabbos. It says that you know there's Hoitzah Nachlasa. Yitzias L'chayim means Hoitzah. How do you get Shtayim Shen Arba? I mean, you're telling me we're not including the Yisur Rabbanon, only Yisur Deraisa. How do you get the Arba? Pretty Gemara, Yitzias, Tartehu, the Havi, and only two Yitzias. Either you're walking out with the object, or you're just taking the object out while you're standing in one place. The only way is having 2 for Hitzah and 2 Hachnasa. Oh, but Yitzias Tani, but it says Yitzias a Shabbos, which means only Hitzah. Ravashi answers, the Tana, Yitziyah is not the same thing as Hoitzah. Had it said Hoitzah or Shabbos, you're right. By saying Yitziyah, it means either direction. Where do you find the word Yitziyah to include also Hachnasa? That's not in the Mishnah of Ayin Gimel, where it lists all 39 malachas, and the very last one is carrying. It doesn't just say, it says, Hamoitzi Meshus L'Shus Chayiv. It doesn't say if you take out from Shus Yochid Shus Abichayv. It says you take out from one Shus to another. It sounds like makes no difference which way you're going. So Hachnasa. Mila Askina de Kamaili Yuli. He's talking about even if you're bringing it in from one to Shus or Shus Aram Shus Yochid, the Kokor the Torah calls it Hitzah, and the Mishnah calls it Hitzah. So who said? The Dilma come mapping because it said the word Moitzi, that in itself tells you that you're taking it out from Shus to Shus Rabim. That's why it doesn't spell it out. No. Im Kain, if it's only coming to tell you that, Nisne, it should have said Hamoitzi Mirshus Hayochel Shus Rabim. My Mishus the Shus. It's a funny expression. Otherwise, you could have said Hamoitzi Mishus Hayochel Shus Rabim, or even say Hamoitzi Lirshus Rabim. By saying Mirshus is trying to highlight, I don't care which way you're going, which direction. And the Tana calls it Hitzah. Now, why? But it's the wrong word. Why are you talking use the word Hitzah? If why use the word Yitzias if we're talking about Hachnos as well? Says the Gemara, Yitzias l'chem is Hitzah. The time of my why? Tana kol akidas chayfes memekayma Hitzah korelei. If you, the whole idea of carrying is you're removing it from its original place. So forget the shoes, which direction you're going. You're taking it away from its original place.
Then why don't you call it so giving one of the shoes? I mean, the shoes said, you don't pick it up from here.
Because you're allowed to carry. Remember, we need a pasuk to tell you you're not allowed to carry, although I wouldn't know. So Loch agree, didn't do anything wrong. So therefore, the pasuk, both examples, which is talking about taking from your oil the basket to go to the mon, or bringing from your oil gifts to the Mishkan, they're both examples of two Deshuyas. Now, there's a famous Baal Moyer in that Mishnah, and the Fine Gimel. The Baal Moyer says, the Isser of Havora is Dalad Amos. What is it? So the Gemara concludes, Gemara himself asks, where do you find the Havora Dalad Amos in the Mishkan? Everything, because I saw, is such a Malach Gruya, because, Mali, what's the same chayfet wherever you go, you didn't create anything. So where do you know the idea of, so Gemara says, Hilchos Gemara tries to bring a few examples, and the Mishkan turned out to be, it never happened. Hilchos Gemara. We learned from Bekoshish, and one opinion there. So the Baal Moshe is a beautiful verse. He says, so what did Halacha Moshe teach us? He taught us that the Gemara says in Bava Metzia, what's the idea of Arba Amas? And even for Yom Deraisa, throw a get, she's Megurish. So what's Pshat Arba Amas? That a person has 4 Amas to spread himself around. As it, and somebody throws a get in there, she's divorced. That means it's like her Rishus Yachid, her private domain. So if you have Dalet Amas, an object just finds itself in a Dalet Amas, that it's Rishus Yachid. When you carry it beyond 4 Amas from its original place, you just took from a Rishus Yachid to a Rishus Rabim. And therefore, that's what Allah is trying to teach you. That this is also Hitzah. So all the malachas of Shabbos revolve around Hitzah. Not only, so surely Hachnasa, which is Mamish the same idea, is called Hitzah, the Gabi where the object originally was. Because that's what the Halacha Moshe Messina teaches us regarding Avar Dal Amis. What does it teach us? That we look at the object, where was it originally, and the Gabi where it was originally, this is called Hitzah. That's the Chiddush of Halacha Moshe Messina, that is called Hitzah. So that gives us a Hasbara in Hachnasa as well. The Hachnasa is Hitzah. It's all the same. But because it's a swat, it's a step lower. So right now the Gemara is learning that Hachnasa is the Av, and Hitzah is the Av, and Hachnasa is the Tulda. However, the Gemara, Omar Avina Salavina. Maslish is now proof in the very Mishnah itself. Forget about being technical, the word Hitzah. Look at the Mishnah. It says, the Mishnah starts off in Masechta Shabbos. 2 which equal 4 in Bifnim, where Rashi learns there for the guy standing inside, or and the Chutz for the guy standing outside, the Kameh Farish. What's the first example the Mishnah gives there? Hachnos. Clear, Shmamana, that the Mishnah, the Tana of that Mishnah, when he says Yitzias, he includes Hachnos. Rava says, Rishuya is Ktani, Rishuya Shtabe Shtayim. Rava says no. Rava says that When it says shtayim, you thought shtayim means the person inside, the person outside, or the shtayim where Rashi learns here hachnasa, b'fnim is hachnasa, and the chutz is hoitzah. Shtayim means are two rishuyas, and these two rishuyas create four averis. Which direction you're going, and with the object, or just the object itself. So therefore, there's no problem at all. I'm just talking about something totally different. I'm just talking about Shuya Shabbos time. Interesting. Taisa says here that Taisa says here that this is Rava, and before we had Ravashi, Taisa says, how in the world is Rava responding to the conversation of Ravashi, and he quotes the Gemara in Kedushin that the day that Rava passed away, Ravashi was born. And Rashi learns the same thing in Kedushin and Gittin, that the day Rava he passed away, the Rava passed away, Ravashi was born. So it must be that either Rava had something to do with this conversation, Islam said. But the Rambam when you learn the Rambam in Hakdama, he talks about the Shalos and how the Torah came down. He says the Rava passed it to Ravashi. And according to the Rambam's way of understanding, Ravashi did live in the lifetime of Rava. And they tried then to understand how it works. Obviously, he learned the Gemara differently. Sorry? We had that once, as we know, with the two Ravashis, but that's not what the Rambam's talking about. When the Gemara in Gittin says that Torah Gul Mokam Echad was Rabbi Yehuda Nosei and Ravashi, that's the Ravashi that we're all talking about. Anyway, Big Machlek is showing him, not here, but in Masechta Shabbos, the base, when the Papa says the Ika Shabbos, that's Chiyuv Pturi. And over here is only Chiyuvim. The Papa himself maybe does not agree that Achnos is a tool. Maybe he holds that Achnos is an Av just as well. But he maybe holds that Achnos is an Av just like Hisoy is, because there's a strong sword, and because it was a Mishkan. Haim Helu Kroshim, they brought up Kroshim to Lagola, it says that's them test over there. So and he's a Machlekes. Now we go to the next case. The next case is the Goyim. So we're really digressing here. Now we're going to go into the Goyim and two secondary. Now in the pasuk it says Se'es Oy Sapachas Beheres. Sapachas is not the name of a leprosy. Sapachas means a secondary, added on. Se'es is one kind of color, and Beheres is another. Beheres is the strongest, which is snow white. Se'es, which is the next one lower, it's a bit less bright white. That is the color of wool before it's dirty. It's nice, clean white wool. Then each one of them has a tulda. The Beheres, the very strong snow white, has a tulda, which is the plaster, the white plaster chalk. And the Se'es has a tulda, which is the white of an egg. There's actually a machlek nachrein. White of an egg, we mean the shell of an egg, or we actually mean, if you cook it, the white around the yolk. What do we mean when we say the white of an egg? Anyway, so it's pretty simple, and they're all chayiv. Says the Gemara. Two that's matter but there's two equal four times we learned in but two main principal ones become four. First one is Beheres Azakashelik. Beheres is the strongest like snow. And the Gemara later on will say, how do you know Beheres is the strongest? Because the pasuk is number two. Shniela, what's the next one? Also an Av, which is Se'es. Se'es is Kisid. Sorry. Shniela, what is its tulda? What's secondary to white snow? Kisid Hechel. That's the chalk or plaster, white plaster. Se'es is Katzem Lava. Se'es, the other Av, that is like white wool, which is clean. Why is it called Se'es? Rashi explains very nicely. Se'es means lifted. Rashi says, and Rashi says a few times in Tazria, that something white is deeper. Something which is less white, it looks like it's raised. You have to put two colors, a very strong white and something which is off-white. And the off-white looks lifted a bit. So therefore, because Se'es is less bright than Beheres, we call it Se'es, lifted. It's lifted. So every color which is dimmer, which is not as bright, looks like it's lifted. And that's what I said a few times in Tazria. So Se'es is lifted, and that is like the white of a wool. And what's Shni'elah? What's its secondary one? Kikroim bear, the white of an egg. That's not what Rashi says. That's sorry? The Ramban. Ramban, I think, learns that way. But actually, and says it here again. Seis is lifted because it looks like it's raised. And it says, Man Tana, who's author of our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says, who's author of this Mishnah? You know, you have a secondary. No, but you have two others and two tullus. Is not like Rabbi Akiva. What do you mean, Rabbi Akiva? Because now the din is that you need the size of a gris to be a tsaras, but you can combine two shades of white to make it a tsaras. I don't care which shades it is. You can combine them. According to Chachamim, according to Rabban, makes no difference. You can combine the Kroim Beya with the seed, the Kroim Beya with Beheres, half a gris here, half a gris there. It makes a full gris, and you now have a tsaras. However, Rabbi Akiva says, Kiva Dama Zula Maila Mazu. The Zula Maila Akiva holds no. You can only combine one with one above it. Only one above it. In Kain Taharta seed Heichel Milatzadif, that the seed Heichel cannot, the seed Heichel, which is number 3, right? Seed Heichel number 3, cannot be mitzvah with anything. Because what's one on top, what's one above seed Heichel? It's the ace. Remember, Behedes is 2 above. It's a tool of Behedes, but between Behedes and seed Heichel is the se'ace, the white wool. So who is it going to be mitzvah with? It cannot be mitzvah with the white wool because it's a different av. It's not its tulda. No, boss. Who can it be mitzvah with? Only its av. And what's its av? Its av would be Behedes, but it's 2 away. Can't be mitzvah. So you want to mitzvah b'hadiman. Litzar. Who should we combine with? Litzar b'hadim Behedes. Ika says that even if it's in between, but give a hold, you can only go one up. Litzar b'hadim says laptul l'deyu. Our Mishnah said there's an av and it's tulda. Very careful. So therefore, it can't be. If you want to ask a question, if that's your question, why are you only asking for Sidechel? Why can't you ask the same question on Kroim Beya? Who's Kroim Beya going to attach to? The Kroim Beya cannot attach itself to Sidechel. It's a different branch, under different av. No, boss was ace, but it's 2 away. Why aren't you asking the same question? Why are you only asking, focusing on Sidechel? Who you combine with Litzavi by the says he can see that different. It's better. Litzavi by the says Labaminehu. It's not the same branch. It's a different branch. That doesn't bother me. You know why? What does the Torah refer to it as sapachas? Sapachas means, and where does it say the word sapachas? Se'es or sapachas. Rabbi Akiva holds the sapachas only comes with the word se'es. The Rabban holds sapachas is in between. Each one has a sapachas. Each one has a secondary. But the Rabbi Akiva holds the sapachas goes to se'es. If sapachas goes to se'es, the Torah is clearly saying there is a secondary to se'es. So the Torah is telling you that this thing over here, because Kroim Beya gets attached, is connected to seis. Okay, so therefore I don't care if it's 2 way. But Kroim Beya got a problem. It's only attaching to Beheres, but there's no sapachas there, it's just the Beheres, 2 way. Hi, seed hechel. Seed hechel without the problem seed hechel. Kroim Beya lakasha. Kroim Beya is not a problem. The Avak of the Kroim Beya mitatoid is ace, even though Kroim Beya is under seis. Rachmana Amar l'seis l'sapachas. It's very clear it says so. Sapachas tvei l'seis. Trying to tell you that there's a secondary item to seis. Avak of the Malchet Ebenei, even though it's 2 lower, it's 2 steps down. No problem. The Torah says so. El seed hechel kasha. I got a problem with seed hechel. El machvarte mastis l'kiva. That's clear. It's clear that what. That the Mishnah cannot be according to Rabbi Akiva, because the Mishnah is telling you there's an Avanas Tulda. Why is telling you about the Avanas Tulda? To tell you they combine. But according to Rabbi Akiva, they can't. The Kroim Beya cannot, the seed Heichel cannot combine with Behedes, because there's a ace in between, and according to Rabbi Akiva, you can only go up 1. But how do you know that? Where did Rabbi Akiva ever say you can only go up 1? The Heichel Shemin Rabbi Akiva Zulaman Mazu. Where did Rabbi Akiva ever say that they can only go up 1? You made this statement here, Rabbi Akiva. Where did it say that? I'm a foolish. Let's be medayik as follows. Ilema mahadatanya. We learned in the Baraisa of Rabbi Yasi. Shoal Yeshua b'Noisha Rabbi Akiva. Yeshua, the son of Rabbi Akiva. As Rabbi Akiva, Rashi says it many times. That who is this Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Rabbi Akiva? He is known as Yeshua ben Korcha. Because Ben Azai said that I'm smarter than everybody else except Kedach Zed, his bald head. He was talking about his father-in-law. But he was a sharp guy. Ben Azai was very sharp. But the traces in a few places. There's no way in the world that they would call a Tana and refer to Rabbi Akiva as a Boli. It's one thing Ben Azai made that statement. He was on his adrenaline rush and he said what he said. But to call a Tana B'Shur ben Korcha the son of Boli can't be. And the Taisa argue B'Shur ben Korcha is not referring to Rabbi Akiva's son. It's another Rabbi Shur ben Rabbi Akiva. He asked his father. Why did it say why is it relevant to say that the Mars the game are 2 that equal 4? Amaloi, he said, and we'll soon explain exactly what his question was. Amaloi, he said to Rabbi Akiva said to him, Lav, Ma Yemru, if not, what are they going to say? Yemru Mikroim Beyo Lamaila. Tummy. Let him just say simply. The whole vart is that the brighter it is, the more tummy it is. So just tell us what the minimum of white, bright white you need. Tell us kroin beya, yeah, which is the lowest level, and go and anything higher, any more white than that is tummy. What do you have to spell out each color, each shade of white? We'll see. We know the look at the egg, white of an egg, and we'll know that the white plaster is more white than that, and the white is more white than that. End of the story. That's Rishu's question to his father. He said to him, you know why? It's to tell you, you know why it gives you an order of this order here by Hedis and Se'is and this and that, to tell you that each one, it connects with the other one. Now, we don't know exactly which Seder Rabbi Akiva is talking about. All we know is that it connects with certain ones. So he said, let us say, my question is still a question. Just say mikroim beya from the white of an egg is that's the minimum white that we can accept. Anything less white than that, off white, is not a tzaras, like boyhak, whatever is not a tzaras. And then they're saying, and then they're all mistarted with each other. That's Rabbi Shu's question to his father. Amaloi, Rabbi Akiva said to me, you know why we did this? Because kol koyin shela baki ben, any koyin is not an expert in the laws of tzaras. Uvish may say in or their names, ain't a royas as in the going. He shouldn't be involved. You have to know what these names are, right? That's what he said. Taish already says that we know that that usually you had a Yisrael who's a mumcha together with him. Yeah, it goes with him because if a Yisrael Baki goes with a coin, it could be a coin shaita, and still he has the right to say tamei. Exactly, ish chesed. Even a coin shaita. We had a few times coin shaita in Taisa. Taisa likes the coin shaita. You also end up testing in Psachim. Exactly. In other words, you don't have to be a chacham to be a nice person. That's every coin. It's natural, comes natural to every coin that they're ish chesed. Yet another place in Bobasa, we learned in Bobasa that they have a short fuse. That's why I made a get makusha. No, but that's what made it get makusha, because they get angry and they divorce their wives. So somehow or another, you can be a very nice person, even if you have a exactly. Okay, says the Gemara. The ilu. So now, what did he only ask about? He only asked about the egg. The ilu masid heichel lekama. Why didn't he also say? Let her just say two. Since you have to go up different channels, right? Let him say, let the Bishua ask his father? All you have to do is tell us. All you have to do is tell us Kroim Beya and up its channel, which is what? Which is Seis. And then he should say, and tell us also the Sid Hechel and its channel, which is Beheres. Why doesn't the two channels, according to our Mishnah, right? Each Av has his own tulda. There must be that he heard Rabbi Akiva say, Rabbi Akiva holds that there are no two channels. Rabbi Akiva holds Beheres has no tuldas. Because the word Tzapachas is only written by Se'es. Se'es has two tuldas. Se'es has the tulda, Se'es, which is wool, has the tulda of the chalk and the tulda of the egg. They both come under there. And that's why he doesn't mention at all the other one, because you can only go up one. And if Beheres had a tulda, it would never be able to combine. With who? Like we said before. You know why you can combine? Because they both belong to Se'es. And by Se'es it says Sabachas, so they're telling you that they all combine. Otherwise, it'd be Zula Ma'ila Mazul. You can only go up one step. The Shmila, I give them a cool about it. Says the Gemara, who said, the Dilma Se'es Vitoldasa and Behedes Vitoldasa. Maybe Se'es, maybe he Taka heard his father Rabbi Akiva saying, no, each one has their own tool, and they could combine. We don't care if it's 2 steps away. But he didn't bother explaining all of his questions. It's obvious what his question was, and he didn't bother. He's talking about Akiva here. Doesn't have to spell it out, or even just spells it out. The Tana of the Mishnah didn't bother delineating it. But maybe he meant as both, and maybe Taka, even those 2 steps away, no, maybe Beheres does have his own tool, and his tool is the chalk. And 2 steps away doesn't bother us. So how do you know Rabbi Akiva says they're going to be 1 step away? So you want to write? You're right. You want to start Rabbi Akiva the following. You have 4 cups of milk. 1 cup of milk, you have 2 drops of blood in there. You look at the milk, it dissolves straight away, very, very slightly off the white. Then the Echad Nofatech Abativ, and the next one, which is a little bit less bright, has 4 drops of blood. It's still it's minuscule, but nevertheless. Sheldam. The Echad Nofatech Shmoina. Then you have one with 8. That's already like the Sida Hechel. It's getting less and less bright and white. The Echad Nofatech Shnei Mashitim. Another one has 12 drops. But and others say 16 drops of blood. In other words, it's really in other words, it's less and less bright that white. Shekulan Maris Levin. At the end of the day, they all look white, but not as bright. Each one is brighter and brighter, brighter. So what do we see clear from here? There's 4 steps. It's one after another. And what's the idea of 4 steps? You can only combine 2 which are close to each other. And that's how we know that Akiva holds Zu L'mayla Mizu.
So you're saying the jump from 16 to 4 is too far to jump.
Exactly. What do you have to know this to tell you that you can only combine? Exactly. So our Mishnah that says you combine, let's say, you combine seed hechel with beheaders can be called Rabbi Akiva because it's 2 steps away. There's a seis in between. That's the Rabbi Akiva we're talking about. Says the Gemara, what are you mixing up things? Over there, you had an alien thing there. You had wine, and maybe Rabbi Akiva holds when you have wine, you can't, something else extraneous to the milk there, you can't combine. But if it's just milk, if it's just white, but just naturally has different shades, who says you can't combine 2 steps away? There you have another reason why the white is not as pure, because you mixed in white. But when English, we're going to give it a pasuk, only we mix something else in there. If it's a natural white color, just a little bit off white, who said you can't combine them? If you can tell me, and you'll tell me what's the difference. The logic is the same. If the white is not as bright, and you're telling me that if it's too far away from each other, they don't combine. What's the chilik if it's natural, or what's the chilik if it's mixed in drops of blood? And Nachman, and who told you taka by pasuk as well that you cannot combine 2 steps away? But Tanya. But now we look at the Mishnah. Kiva says, "Adamdim shebezeh ushebezeh." He says that the red in this cup and the red in this cup is kiyayin hamozik b'mayim, and it's like wine mixed with water. In other words, it's like stronger or weaker. That's all it is, stronger or weaker. So which is therefore what do we have here? Ella. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. In other words, so you're just counting according to the shades that it is. Ella. In other words, yeah. The Ella shall beheadis azakasheleg. It says it following. Beheadis is azakasheleg. Beheadis is strong as white snow, and then it says the shall seed is diahemen. So clearly he counts seed after beheadis. He said that seed is what is lighter than that. And according to you, that if you're telling me that if you're telling me that Akiva holds that there's an order, then what should have been? Should have been the top one is snow, the next one is wool, and the next one is plaster or chalk. But what does Akiva say? So the head is we shall seed the hemena. According to you, Vimisa that Akiva holds his line. Should have said that wool. Sorry, I just want to finish this little sugi here, otherwise it's hard to start in the middle of a tumor. Gemara says you are right. But Tanya, we learned that Rabban says Loisha Amar Akiva. Not that Akiva said she'll seed dia heimena. You're right. We have to swap around. Akiva never said that the next one from beheadis is seed, as if to say that that's the tool of beheadis. No, shall semer dima heimena. So what's Akiva saying here? Akiva is saying you have beheadis. There's nothing secondary to beheadis. Next is semer, which is seis, and the other two are secondary to seis. So what do you see from here? Rabbi Kiva definitely doesn't hold like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that Beheadis has its own secondary one, which is what seed, and Seis has its own secondary one, which is the egg. And but Kodav Kiva can't be, because Kodav Kiva, if Beheadis had a secondary, which is the chalk, it would not combine the two. It would never combine. Why wouldn't it combine? Because there's something in between. That wool is in between, and you can't have two steps away. Therefore, Rabbi Kiva says Beheadis has nothing, no secondaries. So Ace is the one that has the sapach of the secondaries, and he has two. So Ace has two tulgas. It has the what do you call it, the chalk, and then it has the egg, and they combine to the sapachas. The Amish is not a Kiva. Says you want to come to the conclusion, but no longer the Beheadis Azi. Who told you Beheadis is the strongest shade? You maybe Seis. In fact, Seis is first in the Taylor. Maybe Seis is stronger than Beheadis. So what's the problem? On my cross on the pasuk in another pasuk it says the in Beheadis levonihi Beheadis, which is white. He levana. This is the whitest of the white. There's nothing else as white as Beheadis, which is white as snow. You never know that if you're in New York because the snow after 5 minutes turns so black.